Everybody is telling you that silver's crash this year is a repeat of 2011, the year the great bull market died and metals went to sleep for a decade, and I am here to tell you they are looking at the wrong year. This is not 2011, this is 2008, and the difference between those 2 years is the difference between selling right before the biggest move of your life or holding on and finally being rewarded for it. Let me take you back to a gray afternoon in October of 2008. The whole financial world is on fire. Lehman Brothers has just gone under, the banks are begging the government for money, and silver, which had run up above $20 an ounce that spring, has just been cut in half, down to around $9. I remember standing in a coin shop that autumn listening to a fellow sell back every ounce he owned, white in the face, saying the metals were finished, that the crash proved it was all a bubble. He took his loss and he walked out the door for good. And over the next 3 years, silver went from that $9 all the way up to nearly $50 an ounce. He sold at the exact bottom of a five-fold move. He was right that it was a crash. He was dead wrong about what the crash meant. So here is the question that should be keeping you up at night if you own silver. Are we living through a 2011 right now, the top of the mountain with a long, cold winter ahead? Or are we living through a 2008, a trapdoor that drops you down hard and then launches the biggest run of the whole cycle, because those look almost identical on the day they happen, and there is one single thing that tells you which one you are in. I am going to hand it to you before the end of this video, with the number that proves it. So whatever you do, do not touch that sell button until you have heard the whole thing. For the last few months you have been shown two charts side by side. Silver from 2011 to 2014 on one side, silver from this January until today on the other. And I will be honest with you, they do look alike. Lower highs, lower lows, a big run followed by a long grind downward. And that picture has scared a lot of good people into thinking the party is over. But here is what nobody putting those two charts up on the screen wants to tell you. They only put up two charts because a third one ruins their whole story, and that third chart is 2008. The old ways of reading a market had a wisdom to them that we have been in a great hurry to throw out, and part of that wisdom is simple. Never trust a pattern until you have checked it against more than one moment in history. My name is Hank, and for 35 years I have been stacking physical silver and gold, straight through 2008, through 2011, and through everything since. I am not an analyst and I have nothing to sell you, no coins, no newsletter, no buy button. This is education and not financial advice, so please do your own homework. Now, before we go any further, I have to be honest with you, only a very small number of the people who watch this channel are actually subscribed. If you love understanding what is really moving silver and gold, past the scary headlines, even half as much as I do, then do consider subscribing. It is completely free, and you can always change your mind later. It genuinely helps a working man keep making these. Right then, let us get into it, starting with what those two famous charts leave out. When you strip away all the daily noise and just look at where silver closed at the end of each month, something interesting jumps out. If you line up the 2008 crash, the 2011 crash, and this year's crash, and you look at where silver sat 6 months after each top, all three of them land in almost the same spot. All three are down roughly 30% from where they started. 6 months on, right about where we are today, they are triplets. So the very first thing this tells you is that 2011 is not special. It is not the unique match everyone claims. This year looks just as much like 2008 as it looks like 2011. And if you look a little closer at how fast and how deep the fall came in the first 3 or 4 months, this year actually looks more like 2008 than 2011, because 2008 and this year both dropped harder and quicker right out of the gate. 11 was a slower bleed. This was a heart attack, and so was 2008. And there is a reason 2008 fell so hard and so fast, the same reason this year did. Both times the selling was not people calmly deciding metals were a bad idea. Both times it was forced. When the price runs up wild, the exchanges raise the amount of borrowed money a trader has to put down, and the people playing with leverage get a margin call and have to sell everything, right now, whether they want to or not. That is a heart attack, not a diagnosis. And the important thing about forced selling is that it burns itself out. The people forced to sell eventually run out of things to sell, but the people buying out of pure conviction never run out of conviction. In 2008, the forced sellers cleaned themselves out by the winter, and then the metal that was left went to the people who actually wanted it, and those people rode it from $9 to nearly 50. Watch for that same handoff now. Here is your action for right now. Do not let anybody show you a single chart and call it proof. One chart is a story, 3 charts is a fact. Go find silver's price at the end of each month in 2008, 2011, and this year, and line them up yourself. It will take you 10 minutes, and it will change how you see this entire year. I will tell you a story on myself here because I lived both of these years and they taught me opposite lessons. After the 2011 top, I got gloomy. I read all the same articles you are reading now, the ones saying the bull market was dead, and I slowed my buying right down for a couple of years. That was a mistake, but a small one, because at least I did not sell. After the 2008 crash, though, I did the right thing almost by accident. I was young and stubborn, and I just kept buying because it was cheap. And those cheap 2008 and 2009 ounces turned out to be some of the best money I ever put down. The difference between those two moments was not the chart. The charts looked the same. The difference was whether I was reading the headline or reading the world. This year, read the world. Now, to really settle this, we have to bring gold into it, because gold is the leader and silver is the follower. Gold moves first, and silver comes charging after. Gold broke out above its old highs back in 2024, and then silver made its huge run in 2025. That is the pattern. Gold leads, silver follows, every time. And it was gold that led the recovery out of the 2008 crash while everyone was still panicking. So when you line up gold against silver across these same stretches of time, the picture gets even clearer. 6 months after the top, which is where we are sitting right now, gold in the 2011 case was still falling, still negative, dragging silver down into that long winter. But 6 months after the 2008 top, gold had already turned and gone positive. And 6 months after this year's top, right now, gold is positive too. Gold has held the $4,000 line and refused to break. That is not what the top of a bull market looks like. That is what a springboard looks like. But I do not want you leaning on charts alone, because charts cannot see the thing that actually decides this. For that you have to lift your eyes off the price and look at the whole board, like a chess player looking 3 moves ahead. And this is where the real answer lives. Go back to 2008 again. What actually happened after that crash? The world's big powers got together and saved the dollar system. It started with the housing collapse here in America, and it spread into a debt crisis in Europe that most people have plumb forgotten about now. And to hold the whole thing together, China bought around $1 trillion of American government debt between 2006 and 2011. $1 trillion. They propped us up. Everybody rode in the same direction to keep the dollar alive, and once the crisis was patched, all that fear money that had run into gold and silver came back out, and that is what finally ended the metals bull in 2011. The 2011 top was a resolution. The world fixed the problem, together, and metals fell because the fear was over. Now look at where we are this year, because this is the part that should make you sit up straight. We are seeing 2008-style cracks all over again, but this time they are showing up in Japan. Japan's debt situation has gotten so bad that their currency, the yen, has been falling apart. And just this month, in August of 2026, we saw the first bailout of this new crisis. The United States Treasury actually stepped in and bought Japanese yen to prop it up. That was the first time in 28 years that America moved to support the yen. And here is why they did it. Japan holds about $1 1/10 trillion of our government debt. If the Japanese had to sell all those bonds to defend their own currency, it would have blown a hole in the American bond market and sent our interest rates through the roof. So our Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent essentially stood up and told the speculators, "Do not bet against the yen, we will hold it up." He forced Japan to keep holding our debt instead of selling it. Now here is the part that changes everything, and it is the difference between 2008 and today. In 2008, the world cooperated to save the dollar. This year, we are twisting arms to keep it propped up, and every central bank on earth is watching. Because the message America just sent is this: if you hold a big pile of our debt, we will tell you when and whether you are allowed to sell it, even when selling is in your own best interest. Put yourself in their shoes. If somebody told you that about your own savings, what would you do? You would start swapping that debt for something nobody can freeze or block or tell you what to do with. You would swap it for gold. And that is exactly what they are doing, and this is the tell I promised you. This is the number that proves which year we are living in. In 2008, the world bought our debt to save us. Right now, the central banks of the world are trading our debt away and buying gold with both hands, and they are doing it at a record pace. The World Gold Council reports that central banks bought a record 289 tons of gold in a single quarter this year. And here is the kicker. They did it in the very quarter that the price was falling the hardest. They bought the crash. In the quarter before that, they set another record, spending about $37 billion, the most any 3-month stretch has ever seen. More than 2 out of every 3 central banks say they plan to keep adding gold this year. South Korea just came back to buying gold after sitting out for 13 years. That is your tell. In 2011, the smart money was walking away from metals because the crisis was solved. Right now, the smartest, coldest money on the planet is running toward metals while the price falls, because they can see the crisis is just beginning. That is not a 2011 signal. That is a 2008 signal, screaming. And it is not just the fear money. It is the plain arithmetic of the metal itself. The world has now been using more silver than it digs up for 6 years running, 6 straight years of shortage. Since 2021, more than 700 million ounces have been drained out of the world's above-ground stockpiles to cover the gap. You cannot run a shortage like that forever. The above-ground silver is being pulled down year after year, and at some point the shelf is bare. That is the ground truth sitting underneath all the charts and all the headlines, and it does not care one bit whether this looks like 2008 or 2011 to a fellow with a ruler on his screen. And here is the proof of just how deep this money runs and how long it holds. The most expensive coin ever sold at auction is an American gold piece, the 1933 Double Eagle, and it sold in 2021 for $18.9 million, one coin. Now think about who buys a thing like that. Not a day trader, not somebody flipping for a quick dollar. It is bought by people who think in decades and centuries, people who understand that real metal outlasts every government and every currency that has ever tried to replace it. That is the mindset the central banks have right now, and it is the mindset you want to borrow. So let me pull all the way back and give you the whole sweep of it. Everyone is scared of 2011, but the ingredients of 2011 are missing. In 2011, the dollar had already been rescued and the stock market had already taken its beating. Both of those were behind us. Today, neither one has happened yet. The stock market is still sitting up at nosebleed highs, more overpriced right now, by one famous measure, than it was at the peak of the dot-com bubble. The dollar reckoning is still in front of us, not behind us. And silver just broke above $50 an ounce, a ceiling it had banged its head on for 45 years. A move like that does not just fizzle out and die 4 months later. Breaking 45 years of resistance is not the end of something, it is the start of something. And there is a near-term crack you should have your eye on. The Federal Reserve holds its next big meeting in September, and it has become the moment of truth for this whole market. For months, everybody assumed the Fed's next move was to raise interest rates, which tends to strengthen the dollar and lean on metals. But then the job numbers came in ugly. Instead of adding the 83,000 jobs everyone expected in a recent month, the country actually lost 23,000. That is a big miss, and it flipped the whole conversation. Now the Fed may not raise at all, and if they hold, or heaven forbid cut, that takes the boot off the neck of gold and silver. The people who keep waiting on the sidelines for some magic lower price may look up one morning in the fall and find the moment has already passed them by, the way it passed the man who sold at $9 in 2008. And if you bought in January near the top, if you are the fellow who is white in the face right now looking at your statement, I want to say this to you plainly. This is not on you, and you are not a fool. You bought into the most exciting moment in the history of this metal, and there is no shame in that. The people who told you it was a repeat of 2011 were guessing off a single chart. Do not let a guess talk you into becoming the man in that coin shop in 2008 who sold everything at the exact bottom. So here is your one cheap entry ticket, the thing you can actually do this week. You do not need to bet the farm. If you started stacking in January at those high prices, use this moment to buy a little more down here in the low 60s and bring your average cost down. If you are brand new, just buy 1 ounce of silver and one small piece of gold, so you own a little of both the leader and the follower. Keep a little cash on the side for the next dip, because in a market this jumpy there will be another one. And whatever you do, do not go borrowing money to gamble on the paper price. That is not stacking. That is just betting, and betting on borrowed money is exactly what got those forced sellers wiped out in January. The stacker who owns his metal free and clear never gets a margin call. He never gets told to sell at the bottom. He just holds and waits and lets the panicked money hand its ounces over to him at a discount, because in the end this is not really about whether the chart is 2008 or 2011. It is about who you decide to be while everyone else is afraid. The central banks are not confused about this. They are trading their paper promises for real metal as fast as they can, and they are doing it in silence while the headlines scream crash. You can do the same thing on your own small scale at your own kitchen table. You can be your own central bank. You can hold the one form of money that does not need anyone's permission to keep its worth. Think about what that Becent bailout really told the world. It told every saver on earth that a paper promise, even the safest paper promise there is, an American government bond, can come with a string attached, a hand on your shoulder telling you when you are allowed to sell. Real metal in your own hand has no string on it. Nobody tells you when you can sell an ounce of silver in your safe. That is the whole point of it. That is why the central banks want it, and it is why you should want it too. The man who sold at $9 in 2008 was reading the headline. The people who held were reading the board. Read the board. Let me ask you 2 things down in the comments, and I read every one I can. First, tell me where you were, and what you did in 2008 and 2011, whether you were even in metals yet, and whether you bought or sold. And second, tell me honestly, right now today, are you a buyer, a seller, or are you frozen? I want to see the pattern, because the pattern never stops teaching me something. Thank you for spending this time with me. It truly means the world that a working man's plain talk about real money is worth an hour of your day. Stack smart, look after your own, and I will see you next time. And when that next time comes, subscribe, because I am going to answer the question everyone keeps asking me. The country is at war, the headlines are on fire, and yet gold and silver are not shooting up the way they are supposed to. Why not? The answer is not what you think, and once you understand it, you will finally stop being surprised by what these metals